morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's Rick from the Time Air Historical Society, and we have a treat for everybody today. We are in the cockpit of CGYCR, and we are honored to have former pilot Bree Edmunds with us. Bree is going to go through the startup procedure of how to get the F28 in the air, and I'm going to swing over and say hello to Bree.
Hi.
How are you doing this morning, Bree?
Good.
And how long ago did you fly the F28?
It was about this time in 2002 was the last time I flew it.
Wow. And
so 19 years ago, yes.
That's quite some time. How was your experience with the F28?
It was awesome. Just absolutely the greatest airplane that I'll ever fly.
Oh, that's amazing. We are so honored to have you aboard today. Wondering if you can give us, as much as you can remember, the startup procedure for the F28.
Well, just looking up here right now, obviously we had to have the APU running to get air for the engines, because the engines required air. So if you didn't have an APU, then you had to have an external air start, and nobody liked to do that if you didn't have to. So we would turn the APU start master on, and then start the APU. And these instruments here were the ones that pertain to the APU.
Yes.
It was all automatic though. You hit the start button and it would start up, it would accelerate to about 50%, shut off. The starter would cut out, and then you would have just the generator 3 in op light. And I think we were supposed to wait a minute, and then we would turn the generator 3 on.
Yes.
And then we could also use the air in the APU for air conditioning and heating, not just for starting the engine. So that was the air switch there. And then when you decided you wanted to start an engine, so now we've got the APU running.
Yes.
We would turn the engine start master on. You'd look outside, give them the startup sign for 2, and the ramp guy would tell you yes. So you'd hit the start switch. This would start the engine spooling up. Now you're looking at the NH gauge, and I think it was about 15%. And once it got up to about that, you would turn these were called HP fuel cocks.
Right.
You would push the start switch to start. The little red lights would come on in there that would told you the igniters were on, and then you would get a light off, and then you're just monitoring the temperature. And it was, I think 525 or something was as hot as it was supposed to get.
Okay.
And once the engine got up to 50%, it would start, it would cut out the starter. And essentially the engine's idling then.
Right.
And then whenever you're ready to start number 1, you just repeat the whole process. And then the HP fuel cocks, they had a high, low setting, so it's at the low setting for idle, and then for takeoff, they would always go to the high setting.
So we're in Saskatoon right now. What would be a typical flap configuration for Saskatoon?
Normally it would have been flap 11.
Okay.
The 3 settings we had for flap for takeoff were flap 11, 18, and 25.
Right.
I would say probably 95% of the takeoffs were flap 11. Sometimes if the aircraft takeoff graph indicated it, you might use flap 18. That was usually for a contaminated runway or something.
Okay.
And maybe flap 25 if it was a short runway. But, you know, of course, anytime you create lift, you create drag. So normally we didn't use the flap 25. Whatever the aircraft takeoff graph called for.
Sure. So what else would there be for the procedure for takeoff then?
I think you're really putting me on the spot.
I know it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, we would taxi out, and I think basically as long as all of these lights were out,
Yes.
and your fuel pump lights were on, or the lights were out, but the pumps were on, and then we would have, once you're cleared for takeoff, then your lights would go on.
Yeah.
And there was, yeah, I can't really remember. I think that was about it.
Okay.
And then on takeoff,
Yes.
whoever the flying pilot was, they would start the thrust, advancing it. Because this aircraft didn't really have nose wheel steering as such, everything was done with the tiller, the wheel over here.
Yeah.
So even if the FO was doing the takeoff, the captain had to basically keep the airplane straight till about 60 or 80 knots, until your rudder became effective. But the pilot that was flying would start advancing the thrust, and you did it slowly, because what would happen is you'd get an initial burst, your TGTs would really rise,
Right.
and then they would settle back down, and that's what you were waiting for. And once it came back down, you advance the thrust lever to the detent. You just called detent. The non-flying pilot would look at the thrust meters and say, oh, yeah, as long as we're showing 100%, we're the power is set for takeoff. And then it was just a matter of waiting for your speeds. And you can see the bug speeds are here, set here for, that would have been V1, VR, V2, and V-fry, which is flap retract speed.
Wow. And so that pretty much gets you off the runway then.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Bree, thank you so much for giving us that little quick tutorial on how to get the plane started.
Yeah, this is great. It brings back so many memories, man. Oh, man.